I'm Michael Carroll. I work at Strollart. I'm the president of Strollart and the lead producer, artist, and designer for Below the Stone. So if you have any questions about the game, I'm the guy to go to.
I'm Scott Miller, founder of Apogee and 3D Realms.
So, can you guys talk about how your relationship with Apogee started? Like, Scott, how did you discover Stroller, and like, did you reach out to them, or was it did they reach out to you?
Well, it was actually in the very early days of trying to put Apogee together as a company, and Terry and I were looking around on in the indie scene trying to find games that would be interesting to us. And Below the Stone popped up on our radar. It was on Kickstarter. It just looked like a really cool game that would have a lot of systems and crafting and exploration. Had a cute, very cute graphic style, and it just ticked off a lot of the boxes we were looking for. So I actually tried to contact these guys on Discord over a period of actually 6-8 weeks, and they kept blocking me.
It's a funny story of its own.
Yeah, they thought I was just some Weasley publisher guy just trying to, somehow grab their IP or something. But anyway, finally ended up reaching out to Mike on Facebook and say, hey, let's just have a talk, And we had a talk, and it actually went really, really well with the whole team. And it's just kind of snowballed from there. We all kind of got to know each other, and we were explaining. This is before Apogee was announced. We were explaining that we're bringing Apogee back, and that we're looking for games that are really interesting and have lots of potential and lots of gameplay potential and so on in the indie scene. And Below the Stone was the first game that we kind of singled out as one we wanted to sign.
People say like you always fail your first Kickstarter, right? It's inevitable. What did you learn from that first Kickstarter that you're going to be applying to your new one that you've what did your team learn from the Kickstarter in general?
Well, one of the things we learned was really, the thing is, failure is kind of a weird word to use for a Kickstarter when you don't succeed in your funding. Of course, you can look at it as like, oh man, we didn't make the right funding. But in reality, it was a huge win for us. It was something where before we had almost no exposure to anybody. And we went from no exposure to anybody to 200 new fans joining our Discord to Scott Miller and many other publishers contacting us. And it went from almost ground level to suddenly we had, the man that's in this interview right now talking with you, Scott Miller. And it was something that, to us, it was a huge win. And I recommend going to Kickstarter for almost anybody who wants to try to put their face out there, because it's something where even if you don't make your funding, you're going to learn so much and you're going to gain so much just by putting your face out there. So I recommend it to everyone who is looking for more exposure.
I do a lot of tabletop wargaming, and the thing we like to say in that community is you learn nothing by winning. So like you guys learned, I feel like you learned so much from that Kickstarter, and like it opened so many doors for you. And I feel like Kickstarter, even if you don't make your funding, like you said, it could still be a tool. It could be a really useful marketing tour as well, just getting your name out there and getting the name of your game out there.
It was something that, again, like we met so many new people, so many new developers, obviously Apogee, new fans that are still with us today. And it's something that like I do not regret doing for a second.
So let's talk about Below the Stone. Like this is my type of game. I love the gameplay loop of these games. It's essentially a dungeon crawler with elements of crafting, procedurally generated exploration, RPG elements. It has a really awesome gameplay loop. Talk a little about your game.
Of course. Below the Stone is a procedurally generated, hand-drawn pixel art roguelike about dwarves. So, any elves in the audience or anything, sorry, but dwarves are the best. And it's something where from the beginning we had a core concept, and it was that we want to make this game a challenge where every player is going to have a unique experience every time they go down and descend into these mines, where it'll be completely new caves, biomes, enemies that you'll face in almost every adventure. And no experience, no descent will be like a descent you've previously done or a descent that another friend of yours has done. It's something where every player is going to have a unique experience going down. And I hope that the art and the generation, and our team can put that together.
There have been tremendous strides in like technology, you know, with in game development in general. Is it easier to make a pixel art game with this technology now in 2021, or is it more difficult, or does it just provide its own unique set of challenges as opposed to making a 3D game?
Yeah, I think the thing with making a pixel art game is a lot of people make an assumption that, well, it's just pixel art. It's something that it's easy to get into. Of course, there's a little bit of truth to that. Doing pixel art's easy, but you can tell the difference between somebody who's been doing it for years versus somebody who's just starting out. And it's something that takes a while to get good at. My recommendation for any pixel artists who want to get into the industry is just start practicing. It's something where you're going to run into things where you're going to be learning your entire way through. And there's a lot of traditional art that you need to learn before doing pixel art too. Traditional like highlights and shadows and everything. Of course, that's going more into the pixel art side rather than the development side. But when it comes to making a pixel art game, the thing about it is there are unique challenges that you face. And I think almost any game design, whether it's 3D, 2D, top-down, first-person shooter, you're going to run into unique challenges.
What made you decide to reach out to these guys specifically when you found it, and how did you find out about the game originally?
Well, I was on Kickstarter just perusing through their games, you know, whatever games were, going through Kickstarter race period there. So, and I just came across it and it kind of immediately caught my eye. They had a pretty nice little trailer. I could see that the gameplay loop, like you said, is pretty addicting. It's right up my alley. I like those kind of games. So I just knew that this was the kind of game that if Apogee got involved with, we could help these guys, Mike and his team, just take it to the highest level possible. During this whole development that we've been together, we've been coming up with other cool ideas. For instance, there might be an alchemist that you find like on level 3, and as part of one of your quests, you rescue him, then he becomes a permanent fixture at the kingdom level, which is the one safe level at the top of the game, and he helps you, with crafting and formulations and so on to improve your later quests and stuff like that. So, lots of rescue missions, stuff like that. We've come up with the idea of a merge mini game in the game to where, when you find certain, let's say crystals or gems that may be flawed, you can merge them and make better ones and so on. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to put all these like little gameplay loops within games within this game, and it's not really reflected yet in the videos that we're releasing, but there's going to be a lot of depth in this game that's really, I think, going to surprise people when we finally release it.
Mike, just because I found it interesting, you mentioned, Scott mentioned that like he tried to reach out to you. Talk a little about that story about, touching base with Scott.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting one. I mean, it was something where it was a little bit of a mix of both, or all of the things you mentioned, where first it started out with, all right, we're getting spammed by all sorts of publishers. They're trying to, there's no way that we got to just shut it off. We got to just move on, keep on developing. And the difference between all the other publishers and Scott with Apogee was they kept contacting us over and over and over. And it got to the point where we said, all right, we put our hands up and he said, all right, let's talk to them. We can't lose anything by talking with them. And that's what started it all. It was that Apogee reached out to us and was, voiced to us that they were seriously interested in this game by contacting us more than once, even after we said, all right, we got to move on. And it was something that is the reason why we're talking here today, because of that.
Yeah, I think it's great, especially with smaller companies, because you do get that personal touch of like, Scott reaching out to you personally. I mean, obviously, if it could be that way forever without everyone getting slammed with, a ton of work and projects, that would be great. But it's really cool to see that, just that personal touch. You know what I mean? Like, it's not some, intern scrolling the Kickstarter page. It's actually Scott doing it, for his company, which is a really cool thing.
Yeah, and again, that was like the major difference. Like, all the other publishers seem to, any publishers who happen to be listening, reach out personally. And it was something that before it seemed like they were just fishing for us. They were just throwing out a line and seeing what they would catch. Here's our contact info. I represent blah blah blah, and it was something that Apogee actually reached out and found us on all of our social media, and we realized at that point they took us seriously. So that's when we said, all right, let's we can't lose anything by talking. So, and again, it led to what we're doing here today with this meeting.
So Mike, can you talk a little bit about like what separates your game, or like someone who's played maybe Undermine or Terraria or Minecraft, like what's in this game that they'll enjoy, and like what inspirations, what other games can you compare it to that people might like, get an idea of the style and the design and stuff?
Yeah, and we take inspiration from those games you mentioned, Terraria, Undermine, Deep Rock Galactic's a big one in our community. People like to play that one. And it's something that, to be compared to those games, obviously it's awesome because I love all of those games. And it's something that also we try to do something a little bit different with our game. We're not just trying to copy what's already been done before. So with Below the Stone, we're actually making it so you can prep and decide your run the way you want it to be from a previous run. Let's say you got a bunch of copper, right? And you had your copper set of armor, and then you decide, all right, well, I have plenty of copper here. Perhaps I'll make a set of armor for it and just leave it in my bank in case I need to use it later. And I'll just keep mining and doing what I do to prep for in case I need it. Or you can decide to be more forward about it and decide, all right, well, I got this brand new spanking new set of platinum armor, and I'm willing to take the risk on it to go down deeper than I've ever gone before.
Can that be your tagline, to go deeper than you've ever gone before?
Yeah, that's the one I've been using, yeah, so far.
I love it.
It's one of my favorites.
It's funny because I think it's an interesting balance of procedurally generated exploration and crafting and action gameplay in games like this. For example, like Minecraft it's a crafting game. It's in the name, right? The majority of your time is spent crafting. Where Deep Like Galactic, the majority of your time is spent usually fighting, and like there's a crafting element, but it's much more subtle, not to the Minecraft level.
Yeah.
How do you balance those elements so you're not leaning too heavily into the crafting, not too heavily into the action?
Yeah, of course. It's something where we try to stick to a core concept with the game, where almost we'll have like debates within the team, right? Where we'll have like an idea day where we're just coming up with ideas. Every week we try to come up with new ideas for the game. And I mean, it's something where everything needs to stick to a core. And if something's not part of the core concept, it just gets thrown out right away. It's something that we realize there's certain core elements to this game that need to stick. And obviously the things you mentioned just now, crafting, the roguelike element, picking up missions, saving your items at the Dwarven Kingdom and the hub area. All of those are core concepts, and that's what we want to stick to. We want to stick to those sorts of things, and we don't want to stray too far off and make it, like you just suggested. We don't want to make it too much Minecraft or too much Terraria, because we're trying to make something unique here.
And that's great. And can you talk about what platforms your game is coming out for, or I guess what platforms you want to come out for your game? Because your Kickstarter hasn't launched quite yet. Right, you're still in the pre-phase, still in the development phase. Can you talk about like what your eventual goals are?
With the plans of Apogee, we are hoping to release on all consoles, and that's something that on Switch, PlayStation, Xbox, PC. So due to Apogee, we're able to get Below the Stone to many more players than we could have possibly had with our first Kickstarter. We were just hoping for really a PC release. Now we're able to get this in the hands of so many more players.
That's great. For a second, I thought you were going to say exclusively on Steam Deck, not on the PC, just exclusively on Steam Deck.
That needs to be talked about still. I mean, that just came out yesterday.
Dude, Valve might be down. You're like, come on, Valve, give us some money for exclusivity for the Steam Deck. Why not?
Oh yeah.